Hi, everyone, and welcome to StudioJake. This is my vidcast where I, as the host, Jacob Airy, talk to you about all things pop culture from anime to film to novels to music and, of course, television. So, what's on the agenda today? Well, Star Trek fans everywhere got some really good news. The long suffering series known as Star Trek The Discovery, or as real Star Trek fans, as STD, has finally come to an end. Now, we all thought it was ending in season 3 because they did like this reel at the end of the final episode of that season where they showed like the highlights from the show and then ended on a quote from Gene Roddenberry, which clearly none of the writers for the show are familiar with. It suffered on for another season, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. All the changes they did to the canon, such as giving Spock a foster sister that no one cares about, making it where she's like better than everything at him. He's the bestest ever, and all this stuff. And it spun off the Strange New Worlds, which I had high hopes for, until clips from the show were released, where these folks clearly know nothing about Star Trek canon. They ignore things like they changed the name of the Vulcan homeworld for some reason, and it's finally over. It's finally coming to an end. Hopefully, this means that they're going to part ways with Alex Kurtzman. He was a leftover from when J.J. Abrams rebooted the Star Trek films. Now, I'm I know I'm in the minority. I actually enjoy what they call the Kelvin trilogy, so Star Trek, Star Trek Into Darkness, Star Trek Beyond. I kind of enjoyed them. I realized that a lot of Star Trek fans didn't. I just saw them for what they were, another dimension, and a totally different take on the rules. And I thought Chris Pine was a good choice to play Captain Kirk. That's just my opinion. I know that a lot of people have it differently, and that's okay. But with Star Trek Discovery, and then of course Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Star Trek Picard, Lower Decks, we're seeing the fans just say no to this garbage that Kurtzman pushed on people. It's really funny because Alex Bergman, who was in charge of Star Trek post Gene Roddenberry, he produced Voyager and also Star Trek Enterprise. And those shows, they're good, but they're not like top tier, like say the original series or the Next Generation. But I enjoy them. I think they're good. I like Deep Space Nine, even though I will hold to the opinion that the first 3 seasons are basically a soap opera. It wasn't really until they introduced Michael Dorn as Worf from the Next Generation that the series got good. Just my opinion, but whatever. And with Star Trek Discovery, it's supposed to take place during the Federation's war with the Klingon Empire. They changed things, they changed how the Klingons looked. They did this weird thing where they had torches on the bridges of their ship. That made no sense. They changed what the Klingons were about, who they were following, what they were up to. Just absolutely ridiculous. It's sort of stuck. If it had just stayed like sort of a Federation war show, it could have been good. But no, they've got to insert politics into it. Now, Star Trek has always been sort of left leaning, I would say liberal leaning, but they never let that get in the way of a storytelling. With Star Trek Discovery, the dialogue was so bad and so cheesy and so forced. It was just ridiculous. But according to Bleeding Fool, which I highly recommend, bleedingfool.com, from Todd Fisher, Paramount Plus is pulling the plug on Star Trek Discovery. Star Trek Discovery thankfully ends with the upcoming season 5 at Paramount Plus, Variety is reporting. In addition, the 5th and final season will now debut in early 2024 as opposed to this year as originally thought. It's because they don't have any money. Filming is mostly complete on season 5, but according to an individual with knowledge of the situation, there will be some additional filming that has yet to take place. In addition, Paramount is planning to send the show off with events planned in certain key markets throughout the year leading up to the final season's release. Further details will be released at a later date. So you can read the whole article for yourself. Again, that's bleedingfool.com. You know, I'm so glad that the show is ending. It was everything that was the antithesis of Star Trek. When you look at the original series or the Next Generation, it was humanity has moved forward. It was things are optimistic, things are looking up. And Deep Space Nine kind of changed that a little bit with the whole Dominion War storyline, but it was still that humanity could, reject its more negative attitudes and still move forward. because we were part of something larger, a larger universe, if you will. And what made the original series so interesting was it was the Federation is established, although the show gives it like three different names, but you still had this idea of space is still wild. That's why they're sending the flagship commanded by Captain Kirk out into deep space to explore planets. Some of the aliens look like humans. Some of them look very different. And same with Star Trek: The Next Generation. They're exploring new parts of space. They're making headway into the relationship with the Romulans, and then it's just Next Generation takes place shortly after a war with Cardassia, Kardashians, the Cardassians, who of course are the main foes in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. With Voyager, it was more about survival. It's the journey home. They get flung out into deep space into a totally different area of the universe, and they have to fly back, and it takes them it's supposed to take them 70 years. And Star Trek Enterprise was supposed to be a prequel. It was about how humanity is first going out. They're building in the first season. The only warp capable ship that's beyond warp 1 is the Enterprise, and it has to go out and explore. The only thing I didn't like about Enterprise was it changed the first contact with the Ferengi. In Next Generation, it was Captain Picard who made first contact with the Ferengi. In Enterprise, it was Captain Archer. They kind of rebooted it and retooled it a little bit. uh, I think I wish that they had stuck sort of with the original canon, but it was still a good show. That was, more of a blip. And I think with Star Trek Discovery, they were trying to undo all that. So it was this more nihilistic. Humans are still bad. There's still things that they haven't overcome. You saw that in Picard, right? Picard leaves Starfleet because he's mad how they're not handling the Romulan situation. And we see this with Lower Decks, where we're not just going to remove the optimism that was in the old shows. We're going to make fun of it. We're going to mock it. And then the jokes end up not even being accurate. Like, they couldn't even get out that Romulans don't drink whiskey, they drink ale. They had to keep that in line. And of course, it was basically jokes made by people who looked up Star Trek on Wikipedia but didn't actually watch the show. And if you're going to self-parody, there's nothing wrong with that. The first season of Harley Quinn was a good parody of sort of Batman mythology and Harley Quinn in particular, but then season 2 they tried to take their silliness to the next level, and then it just evolved where now she's this Deadpool wannabe show, and we saw that with these Star Trek shows. So hopefully, with STD ending, with Picard ending, and hopefully Lower Decks will follow suit. We'll see. I totally skipped out on the last season of Lower Decks. I think they're in their third season. Totally missed it. The first season was enough abuse for this Star Trek fan. I've been a Star Trek fan since before I was a teenager. Something that I really appreciated. I got involved with the Jean-Luc Picard series, right? But then that led me into watching the other shows, like the original series, like the films, like Deep Space Nine and Voyager and Enterprise. I know now, like, it's really popular for all these like kids born in the 90s, edgelords and early 2000s, where they like want to bash Voyager. Voyager was a perfectly good show. Sure, when they got 7 of 9, they focused too much on her as the character and took away sort of the intrigue of them being out in deep space, but it was still a good show. The Borg were excellent. They introduced the Hirogen, which is probably one of my favorite nemesis. Now, the Borg are the greatest Star Trek villains ever created, and I will fight anyone who says differently. That's why I love the movie Star Trek First Contact so much. Apparently, like, now it's a thing where they're like, oh, I don't like Generations or First Contact and Insurrection. No one likes Nemesis, so we're all pretty much in agreement there. But I thought those films were good. They're enjoyable. They're fun. The thing with Discovery, with Strange New Worlds, with Lower Decks, and with Picard is they're not enjoyable. They're not made by fans for fans or even people who have a passing familiarity with the franchise. So I hope that this is a good sign that we'll see the end of Kurtzman reign, and Paramount will bring in someone who actually knows about Star Trek to make the shows more enjoyable, not just for fans, but for general audiences as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up, that you'll leave me a comment and tell me what you think, that you'll share it out with your friends, and of course, consider subscribing to StudioJake. I cover all kinds of nerd and pop culture topics, including film, television, anime, comic books, and so much more. I hope that you'll also head over to my main website, StudioJakeMedia.com, where I have even more news, views, and commentary. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, head over to my locals page. That's studiojakemedia.locals.com. It's the best way to support me. I'm trying to build a little community there. I have exclusive reviews and articles, so definitely head over there and check it out. And I'll see you next time, right here on Studio Jake.